Let's keep going with collision detection. One of the things you'll want to know how to do is not just use simple built-in shapes like the ones in the example we did last time, just circles. You'll want to add graphics to your interactive sketches so that they look better, right? So how can we add some graphics to this collision detection example so that it looks more like a snowball or a snowman? Well, that's what I'm going to show today. So what I've done is created a PNG file, which we talked about in one of the lecture on images, and that's an image format that lets you have transparency. So in the image that I've got here, the corners of that circle are transparent. So when I put that into my sketch, I'm going to be able to draw it onto the circle and see the background behind. So what I'll do is first just make a copy of this sketch so that I can keep my previous version, and I'm going to call it collision image or collision graphics. And I'll go to the sketch folder and then add a file and just drag that snowball.png file onto the sketch. Once it's uploaded, if I open the project folder, we can see that it's been uploaded. Now, if you did anything with images in assignment 1, you'll probably will have run into problems with misspelled file names or bad paths and things like that. So whenever I'm using any external media like this, the first thing I do is just double check that it's uploaded properly. So let me do that. I'm going to say create a new variable, let snow image, and then add a preload function. And then I'm going to say snow image equals load image, and then the name to that file, so snowball.png. And then once that's loaded, I'm just going to draw that to the canvas to test that it's working. Image, snow image, it's just img 00. Run that. And we see it show up on the screen. Now you put it in the preload if you remember, so that you're guaranteed that that image has finished loading before the draw loop starts. Sometimes if you don't do that, you'll end up with one of those undefined errors. All right, so that's working. Let's now use that image that we've loaded in our snowball and snowman classes. And if you like, just take a moment and think about where in the class would you add the code to display the graphic. It's in one of the functions of the snowman object or the snowball object that we added last time. So we've got the constructor, the update function, and then the show function. Well, obviously it's going to go in the show function, right? So basically going to put a line in there after I draw the circle with that snow image variable, and instead of drawing it at 0, 0, I'm going to draw it at this.x and this.y. Now when I run this, I'm going to get an error, and I wonder if you can see ahead of time what that error is going to be. I mean, it's not a code error, but it's a sort of a semantic error. You can see that the image is offset from where I want it to be, and it's the wrong size. So let's fix that. Let's fix the size first. Here where I drew the image on line 15, I just used the version where I only just give it an X and a Y position, but remember I can also give it a width and a height. So the width of this should be 2 times the radius 10, right? So it should be 20 wide and 20 high. That should fix the width, and the height should be the right size. Looks like it. Now let's fix the offset. The reason for that offset is because images, by default when they're drawing, when I draw an image, the XY position of the image by default is the top left corner. But the XY position for a circle, by default, is the center of the circle. So what I should do is set that default to something different. And if I go back to my sketch.js, and in the setup function, if I just write image mode center, that will change that default. So now if I run that, it should line up when I create a snowball. And there it goes. Now, if you had a sketch where you had some images that you wanted to be drawn from the center and some where you wanted them to be drawn from the top left corner, you might need to find other ways of doing this, like just adding an offset to the X and Y, but for us, in this example, this will work fine. Okay, now let's do pretty much exactly the same thing to the snowman. I'll just copy that line, and then in the snowman.js, after each of these circles are drawn, I'm going to add an image of a snowball. So it's going to be this.x and this.y for the first one, but not 2020. It's going to be 3030 because it's a slightly larger circle that we draw. And then the second one is going to be this.x and this.y plus 35 because it's a little bit further down the page. And it's going to be 40 wide and 40 high because the circle is radius 20. And then the final one is going to be at this.x and this.y plus 80. And the radius is 25, so the width and the height are going to be 50. Let's run that. Now the snowman has the graphics as well. Now something's got lost here. Remember in the previous example when the snowball collided with the snowman, it turned red. That was kind of the whole point of this exercise, and there's a number of different ways I can do this, but for now what I'm going to do is just go back into sketch.js, and rather than setting the fill, I'm going to set the stroke. So I'm going to say, instead of setting fill to 255, I'm going to say no stroke. Turn the stroke off, and actually in the start I'll say no fill as well. Whoops. And here, when the snowman is hit, rather than setting the fill, I'm going to set the stroke to be red. And the stroke weight to be quite thick, I'm going to set it to be 4. I'll run that. And when the snowman is hit, you can see that it turns red. So the collision detection is still working. So that's working. I might come back and do another example where we add things like keeping score, moving the snowman, maybe having it jiggle when it gets hit. Those are all things we could do. But before I leave you, I just wanted to point out that if you go to the P5JS libraries page and scroll down a bit, you'll see there's one there called P5 Collide 2D. And that provides pretty much all of the functionality that I'm showing in this example and a lot more. If you click through to the GitHub page for the library, it's got the documentation there. And it's also got a link to this collision detection book by Jeffrey Thompson. And if you click through to that, what you'll find is a really tremendous a great little set of tutorials about doing collision detection. And the difference between what's done in this set of tutorials and what I'm doing in the example is I'm just dealing with two circles intersecting, but this one tests circles and boxes and lines and any kind of shape, triangles as well. So if you've got more complex shapes that you want to do your collision detection on, this might be worth checking out. All right, happy collision detection, happy creative coding, and I'll see you in the next code example.